Record. We are recording, I hope. We're recording. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dave from Chase the Summit, and this is the Chase the Summit Trail Talk podcast, where we talk all about fitness tech, wearables, GPS watches, whatever I'm into on a given week, including trail and ultra running. If you're into that sort of thing, you're probably in the right place. If you're not, give it a chance. Stick around for a little bit. I'm probably moderately entertaining, I hope. I don't even know what I'm doing in this intro. Today is episode 53. Yes, 53. And I'm alone today. No guest, no co-host, no wife today. They're all busy, I guess. Today we're going to be talking about a few things. First of all, and most importantly, the big news out of Apple, the WWDC 23 event that happened a couple of days ago. There was a lot of news that came out of that with everything from new products in their Mac world to the crazy Vision Pro AR headset, and of course some news when it comes to the Apple Watch, which is what we're going to talk about today, but we'll touch base on everything there. I also want to talk about the Garmin Epix and Fenix 7 Pro release that happened a couple of weeks ago. Well, not even a couple of weeks, like 8 days ago. And what that means, what I've learned about them so far. I've been wearing one ever since launch day and before that, so I've got quite a bit of time I've spent with that. And I also want to touch base on my personal stuff, including a previous race I ran, 50 miler, a couple of weeks ago. Didn't go as planned. You probably saw the video, but if you didn't, you'll hear about it here. And of course, we'll talk about upcoming races in July. Got a 100 miler. Yikes. Before we get into all that stuff, I do want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to the Patreon members and YouTube members that make this podcast work. If it wasn't for you, it would be hard to dedicate time to this. And I enjoy doing this. So thank you very much for clicking the link in the show notes down below and contributing a couple of bucks every month, because that really goes a long way with me. And I really appreciate it. Some of you have been supporting the show for like a year now, and it's really awesome, and thank you so much. I am planning on doing actually a exclusive live stream for Patreon members only. I put a feeler out because there's not a huge amount of Patreon members. I wanted to, understand what time and days work best for most people. So if you are a Patreon member, head over to the Patreon website and answer that question, because I only got a couple of responses, and I'd like to maximize, who could be involved in it. So thank you again. And if you're interested in Patreon, check out the link at the bottom of the show notes. I've got one more shout out. If you haven't already, head over to YouTube and dive into the Chase the Summit Trail Talk podcast YouTube channel. It's not just a podcast anymore. It's also a YouTube channel that's entirely different from my main channel. This is only for the podcast, where you can both listen to me just like a podcast, but now you can see me as well. If you haven't done it yet, head over there. Link is in the show notes down below, and hit that subscribe button and leave me a comment. That would be great. With that, I've got one more quick plug. If you're listening to the podcast and you want to represent the podcast on your next running adventure, you can get some merch over at the Chase the Summit merch store. Here's one of the reflective stickers I sell. I love these stickers. They're only a couple of bucks, but you actually get one of these for free if you buy a Chase the Summit trucker hat. So head over to chasesummit.com/shop and use the discount code LISTEN, LISTEN 20, the numbers, listen 20 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. That is not something I advertise anywhere but on this podcast. So if you're listening, you're an exclusive person who gets that discount, because I don't make any money off those sales. I just do it as a way of saying thank you for listening to the podcast. So if you're interested in merch, go check that out. If you're not, sorry for the plug. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about, let's talk we'll talk about the training and the race and stuff, and then we'll get to some of the tech news. So first up, I want to rewind time a little bit to the Wapack and back race I ran a couple of weeks ago. If you follow me on the main channel over at the Chase the Summit YouTube channel, you probably have seen the video that I posted about this. This was a 50-mile race that I participated in over on the Wapack. I always call it the Wapack, but it's actually called the Wapack Trail. This race is hosted by a local running club called the Trail Animals Running Club. And I've done this race, I think, for the past 4 years. I think I've completed it 4 times. This race comes in a few different distances. There's a 21.5 miler, there's a 43 miler, and then there's a 50 miler. And you might be wondering, those numbers sound kind of weird, not rounded, not marathon. That's because the trail this takes place on is a point-to-point trail. So it's not a loop. It goes through several mountains along the Wapack Trail. And so the shortest distance is one pass of that trail. That's 21.5 miles long. The 43-mile distance is you go out, turn around, and come back. You do the trail twice. And then to get to 50, for people who like that nice round 50-mile, number, or if you're trying to qualify for something, you need 50 miles, you can do the out and back. And then at the start-finish line, you turn around one more time just to kick your butt a little bit more. And you do a 7-mile out and back over Mount Watatic, which is pretty gnarly terrain. This whole trail is really difficult. The 50-mile distance has around 10,000 plus feet of elevation gain, and it's generally pretty technical. There's a lot of rock scrambles and loose terrain and roots and rocks and muddy sections, and it's a really hard race. So for me, I started off strong. The race was going well. The first 12 miles, I was feeling surprisingly strong. And I was actually hanging with a guy named Chris. We were chatting about being dads and mowing lawns and, stuff dads do. And eventually I realized this guy was hitting the gas a little too hard for me and my training level. So I told him I was backing off. And on one big particular climb, right around that mile 13, 14 point, I didn't feel great. Something was going south. And so I told him, hey man, I'm backing off. He went on ahead, and then I just struggled for the next couple of miles until the next aid station. And at that point, it was like mile 16. I got into the final aid station before the turnaround point, and I was feeling terrible. Like I had stomach cramps and a headache. I was feeling kind of woozy. I was definitely dehydrated, which was very odd, because I was drinking a lot. There was a lot going in, and it wasn't a particularly hot day. I was just feeling bad, and my stomach was cramping. I felt sick, and the aid station workers there were great. I knew them from previous races. They gave me a pep talk. I sat down for a minute. I consumed a bunch of electrolytes, and I tried to rebound a bit. I pulled myself out of the funk a little bit, enough to continue on to the trail. Now, the downside here is from distance mile, that 16-mile point to the 21.5-mile turnaround are the hardest part of the trail. That 5-mile section is a full-on ass kicker. I don't swear on this podcast, but I'm saying that word. This was a full-on ass kicker. So I struggled that last 5 miles. I continued to degrade, and it's interesting that I knew I was feeling dehydrated. So at that last aid station, I cameled up. I drank my 2 flasks. I filled them again. I drank them again, and then I filled them again, and then I stowed them away for that 5-mile segment. And I thought I'd consumed way more than enough water for 5 miles. Unfortunately, whatever state I was in at that point, I couldn't recover from. I drank my waters again within the first 2.5 miles, and then I was out of water until I got to that aid station. That 5-mile segment took me like 2 hours or something stupid. So I got to the turnaround point. At this point, I was getting passed left and right by other runners. I had a feeling like I was in, close to last place at this point. I was probably in third or fourth to last place. And that's where I was like, I don't know about this. So I tried to rebound again. I consumed some potato chips and electrolytes and tried to get something in me to get back out on the trail. But unfortunately, I think the damage was done. And at that point, I pulled the plug. I told them at the aid station that I had to stop. It would be unsafe for me to go back in. And I think I made the right decision. I'm just confused what the hell happened there. But yeah, I think it was the right decision for a couple of reasons. First, because this trail is kind of backcountry. You're kind of out there. It's not really a recreational park. It is a state park, but it's not really like highly trafficked, especially those northern and middle sections. If you're out there alone, you're kind of alone, except for trail runners and hikers who might be passing by. But there's not a whole lot of. It's not super packed with people, if you know what I'm saying. So I was worried that I might get back out there, find myself in a situation where I had to stop, and then be like trying to call someone on my phone or hoping somebody comes and finds me. Like I didn't want to be a burden on other people. And the way I was feeling didn't feel like I could recover from it. The other reason I didn't go back out is because, like, I hate to admit it, but I knew I was like closing in on last place, and I didn't feel like chasing cutoff times for the rest of the event. That's just not like the day I wanted ahead of me. So the idea of going back out and chasing cutoffs just wasn't appealing. So I decided I'm going to cut my losses, pull the plug, and I told the aid station workers I had to stop. Now, unfortunately, this race is a hard one to drop out of because, like I said, it's kind of remote, it's kind of backcountry. So the aid station even was only 2 people, 2 volunteers, and they had to wait until the rest of the runners came through before they could break down their tent, put away the folding table they have, clean up all the, snacks and water and everything, and then they could give me a ride. And to make it even more complicated, they actually had someone's car that they had to get from point A to point B. And so I ended up driving this guy's Prius that I didn't even know. I drove his car to another aid station where I was able to get a ride back to my car at the start finish line. And the ride is really long because it's a 21.5 mile trail and the road doesn't go right straight back. So you're kind of weaving in and out of the mountains. And it was a whole process, but I eventually got back to my car. Now, I want to briefly talk about what I think went wrong here. I think my main issue was not preparing before the race for the race. So the day before, for whatever reason, I decided I was going to do a bunch of yard work. I was out mowing the lawn. I was digging holes. I was cleaning up for a party we were planning on having. And so I was out in the sun literally all day getting baked. I had a sunburn on my head because I'm bald, and I had a lot of sun exposure and definitely did not dehydrate enough. And I did all this 12 hours before the event was going to happen. Why? Because I'm an idiot. I don't really know. I think I've become a little bit numb to the idea of racing. I've participated in a lot of races. I'm not like a pro or anything, but I feel like I've just got too comfortable with the idea of running an ultramarathon, and this kind of bit me this time around. So that's a big lesson learned. Another thing I think I did wrong was I was using the nutrition that the race provided, and they were using a product that I'm not particularly used to. They're using a product called Heil. Now, nothing against this product or the race staff, but I think they had diluted their electrolyte mix a little bit too much. And I'm somebody who likes a heavy salt intake. And I wasn't getting that from the product that they were giving us during the race. That brings me to the last lesson learned is I should have been using my own electrolyte mix. I actually had Tailwind, which is what I like to use, in my bag, and it was available to me, but I didn't want to waste the time to stop and fiddle with ripping open the bag and dumping it in my water bottle. Because as you know, if you've done a race like this, it's a pain in the butt to deal with your own powdered mix, which is a good plug for a friend of mine. If you've watched YouTube and you're a cyclist or a triathlete, you may have stumbled across this guy. Justin does triathlon, and he actually invented a new electrolyte mix that I actually have around here somewhere. Oh yeah, it's right behind me. I'm not going to reach for it because then I have to stop podcasting. But he invented a new electrolyte product that is actually a solid. It's like a sugar cube that's like a stick, and you can stick it in your drink rather than dealing with the powders like I just talked about. That's a huge pain in the butt. These new sticks, I've been testing them out for the past week or so. They're really convenient, and they're pretty cool. So they're called fuel rods. I'm losing my track on talking about the race, but Fuel Rods by Justin. Go check out the website. I'll put it in the show notes down below. They're pretty affordable, and they're basically a solid form of Tailwind. They're basically just like sugar and electrolytes in a solid bar form. And so far, I'm really digging them. So go check those out. Anyways, that's really it for the race. It didn't go as planned. It was a huge bummer on my part. It was a big morale hit for me because I was actually feeling relatively in shape up until that point. And then I bonked at that race. And actually, I was like cramping up for the next couple of days trying to recover from that race because I was so dehydrated. So it didn't go great, unfortunately. And, you know, we all have our ups and downs. This was certainly one of my downs. But it was a really hard race, and I think I made the right decision. Now, pivoting out of that conversation, I want to briefly talk about the next race on the calendar, which is the Vermont 100. That is in July. That is roughly 1 month from today. It's like a month and a week from today. It's in mid-July, typically a very warm day at the Vermont 100. And I don't feel fully prepared for this race. If you've followed along, last year I ran it. I ran the Vermont 100 in like 25 hours and I forget, it was like 25 hours, 17 minutes or something. I was really proud of that time. And I told myself last year, I'm going to come back and I'm going to try to break 24 hours. I would love to get under 24 hours. I don't know why. You get a bigger buckle if you go under 24 hours. And it would be just personally a really awesome accomplishment. So I told myself last year, I'm going to come back in 2023 and have the best time, be in the best shape of my life. And sadly, I'm just not there. There has been so many things going on in the Dillon house, in our world that you don't see on YouTube. Like my kids play baseball. We're there 3-4 days a week. We're going to baseball games and practices. My other kids play soccer. There's a running thing my kids do. And on top of that, there's been like a ton of house projects we've been doing because we moved into a new house. All to say, I've been doing a lot of grown-up stuff and not focusing on my running and my training as much as I should be. And it's really challenging for me because I'm somebody, like, maybe I'm selfish, but my wife wakes up at 4:00 in the morning every day to get her workout and her run in. She enjoys doing that. She doesn't like waking up that early, but the feeling she gets after is rewarding. She gets it all done before the day starts, which is great. But it's really challenging for me to do that. Like I want to run during the day when the weather's nice. And also there's an aspect to that is like training for the environment you're going to be running in. In Vermont, it's particularly it could be very sunny, it could be hot. And I want to try to replicate that as much as possible in my training runs. And doing that in the middle of the night or in the dark or in the morning isn't great. Also, I'm not a morning person. I don't love waking up at 4:00 in the morning. And it kind of ruins my whole day because I'm trashed like by lunchtime and I have a hard time helping my kids. And it's just not conducive to a happy lifestyle for me. Now I can wake up early, like on race day, I'm happy to do it, but like every day it's a struggle. And I get that no one really enjoys it. I'm just like trying to explain my thoughts here. So I haven't been putting in enough miles, flat out. Like I've been putting in 20 to 30 miles a week, and a lot of it's on roads. I'm not getting enough trails. As transparent as I can be here, I am not prepared for the Vermont 100. I'm still going to be there. I'm still going to give it up everything I got. I'm just like very concerned, and I doubt, I'm kind of throwing out the idea of sub 24 hours at this point because, I don't want to have that goal in my head and then try to reach for it and overheat myself, dehydrate myself, make stupid decisions like I did at the last race. I want to focus on having the best day I can. So I'm putting that out there for the world. If you see me at Vermont and you're running the race, don't tell me to go faster. Don't tell me to get sub 24. Just tell me to survive. And that's the reality of the situation. Like it's easy to watch, YouTube videos or any runner on social media these days and just expect them to be elite athletes. And I'm not. So, it is what it is. I was hoping for more this year, but, we still have young kids. We still have a crazy schedule. And I think, I don't know. I don't want to say next year is going to be the year because I said that last year. It's always going to be hard. So props to you parents out there that do it all and you're still an elite athlete. Props to you. Anyways, that's kind of an overall overarching, just me being transparent as to what's going on with me and my training right now. Yeah, that's it. Moving on, we're going to move right into the tech news because that was all banter training stuff. Who cares about Dave and his training stuff? Let's talk about Apple. So, as I said during the intro of this podcast, Apple held their WWDC 23 event. That's the Worldwide Developer Conference, where they announce, typically it's a lot of geeky stuff like firmware related things or tech or something they're working on. But occasionally they do release hardware at these events. And more lately, it seems like as time moves on, there's more and more hardware. So these types of events become even more important. So what was announced? Things we're not going to dive too deep on are the new MacBook Air 15-inch. It's the same as the smaller MacBook Air, but now it's gotten bigger. They also introduced a new version of the Mac Studio, and they brought back the Mac Pro. If you're a Mac person, this is like crazy to me. I thought the Mac Pro was dead, but they brought it back, they revived it, and they put an M2 Ultra chip in it, making it like the craziest, most powerful computer like ever made, basically. Unfortunately, that computer starts at $7,000, so it ain't cheap. And then on top of that, the craziest thing launched was the Vision Pro. If you didn't watch the event, I highly suggest you go check it out or watch some of their promo videos around the Vision Pro. The Vision Pro is essentially a new VR headset from Apple. However, it's nothing like an Oculus or, HTC, whatever. All the VR headsets out there now, like the Meta Quest, they are different because the Vision Pro from Apple is essentially a computer. It's got an M2 chip in it, which is the same as in my laptop or in a desktop computer inside the headset. And it's got a ton of sensors on it. And so you wear this thing, it's got cameras to detect your hands. It's got pass-through cameras to see what's going on around you. And apparently it's got little tiny 4K displays on both eyes. It looks super freaking cool. And I'm hopeful to try this out eventually. Honestly, there are some aspects of this that could be interesting from like a fitness and, the world we live in, where like maybe a treadmill run or something, I don't know, like augmented reality for treadmill running or even, gym workout sessions or something. It could get really interesting with a device like this. So I'm really interested to see where this goes. Like I said, I'm not going to dive too deep on it, but this thing costs $3,500, which is the same price as my, 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is kind of bananas. And I can't even think of how many people actually buy this thing. But I guess, Apple did their homework, so they're confident that someone will buy it. On top of the new hardware that was announced, that's all the new hardware. There was a couple of new software-related things, and this is where we get into what I want to talk about here. So the first big enhancement comes to the iPhone in your pocket. The new iPhone 17, that'll bring a host of new features to the iPhone, including some for wellness. They're focusing on a big mental wellness push. So there's like a new journal app that'll help you, what do they say? Appreciate gratitude or something like that. Like it's all about gratitude and being happy with what you have and blah, blah, blah. That's going to be part of your phone soon. But more importantly, there was a big advance in the Apple Watch OS. So Apple Watch OS 10 is coming to the Apple Watch Series 8, the SE, and the Apple Watch Ultra. And I believe there's going to be some other models included there, like the Series 7. I don't know if the older SE will get it, but yeah, a lot of Apple Watches will get OS 10. Certain features will be exclusive to the newer models, but a lot of them will get this new update. With watchOS 10, there's an entirely revamped user interface. So the watch face is different, the app draw is different, the way you interact with it is different. There's these little widgets that sort of float over the watch face to see what's going on with your weather and your stocks and your calendar events and things like that. It's all just a little bit more modern, and it's definitely the biggest update, at a software level, like for the entire user interface and operating system that I've seen on Apple Watch in a very long time. Like ever since Apple Watch was invented years ago, the user interface has looked very similar. And with this OS 10 update, it's a big leap into a different direction, good or bad. Some things are a little different. Like I've actually installed the developer version on my Apple Watch Ultra. And what I've noticed is that there's some weird things like the red mode that you have with the Wayfinder watch face. That's like the analog adventure watch face. That is different now, where you can't go into red shift mode just by rolling the wheel. You have to go into the settings and turn on red shift mode, which is kind of weird. But generally speaking, I do like it so far, and it's definitely not fully baked yet. I'm using the developer model or developer version, so there's going to be a lot more to come. Other than the overall OS 10 update and the different look that's there, what's new in the Apple Watch? Well, there's a few important things that they've updated from a sports and fitness side of things. The first thing, the biggest thing, well, not the biggest, but a big thing, is that they've now included external sensor support for cycling. So if you're a cyclist, you've got a power meter, you've got a cadence sensor, speed sensor, whatever, you can now pair that with your Apple Watch, which is kind of a big deal because previously a lot of you out there would have your Garmin bike computer or a Garmin watch or a Coros or a Suunto or a Polar just for that purpose because you wanted to pair your sensors. That is now available in watchOS 10 coming in the near future. Another big update, I should mention with that, it's not compatible with every single sensor yet, but I think they're going to get there once it's at full production. Another big update when it comes to cycling is that they've included this new view. So when you start a cycling app or activity on your watch, it'll actually pop up on your phone and it'll actually take up your entire phone screen. So when you start a cycling activity, you'll see all of your metrics right on your phone as well as on the watch. And why that's important is that if you're riding a bike, it's really not convenient to look down at your wrist. And sure, you could put the watch on your handlebars, but then you can't use the heart rate sensor that's built into the watch. So now you can mirror all of your metrics to your phone. That includes all of the new sensor support, cadence, speed, power, and you can have the optical heart rate sensor information paired to your phone as well. So you can see that at a glance and put your phone, mount this to the handlebars instead of your watch. Super cool. I've got some questions about both of these new features when it comes to cycling. I'm wondering if these will also be available for running. Like, will I be able to pair external sensors for running, not just heart rate, because that you could always do that, but could I pair a Stride pod for running power and use that natively in the workout app? That's to be determined. I'll be testing that in the near future, and you'll probably hear about that sometime later in July or later in June or something like that. But for now, it's a big TBD. Another question I have when it comes to that new mirrored mode, when it comes to the phone, will I be able to use that for running? Because I could see a use case if I was on my treadmill where if I wanted to see my heart rate, my distance, my pace, and my cadence and stuff right in front of me, instead of looking at my watch or relying on the treadmill information, that would be super cool to mirror that to my phone as well, or even my iPad would be really cool. Those two features, it's a big question mark. I'm not sure if they'll be available for all sports or just for cycling. In the demos that Apple showed off, it was really just for cycling. So it could just be that. I'm not totally sure. Another new feature that they've added is that they've included a new compass. So there's always been a compass on the Apple Watch Ultra and Series 8 with watchOS 9. They introduced a new compass app that had some basic forms of navigation, so you could get back to the beginning of your activity and you could see like a breadcrumb trail in the compass. Now on that breadcrumb trail, there's a new feature where when you lose your cell phone signal, when you're out, trail running or hiking, and you look at your watch, you're going to now see a new icon along the route in your compass app. And that icon will tell you where you actually lost cell phone signal and where you've reacquired it. I find this to be really cool. And honestly, I kind of hope, like, I bet Garmin could pull this off too in their mapping. That would be really cool. But I really like this feature because if you imagine you're out in the wild, I've been in the mountains plenty of times where, not even for emergency purposes, but if I wanted to send a message to my wife, letting her know I'm okay or I'm on track, or send her a picture of something like a beautiful landscape or whatever I'm doing, I would love to know where I had cell phone signal along my route, because I might want to backtrack to that point, reacquire cell phone signal and send my message. And without that, you don't really know when you've had, where along the route, because your phone's buried in your backpack or whatever. So really cool feature there. Really unique. I like it a lot. And on top of that, they've added another icon that's similar, but this icon is for SOS or emergency calling. And this will actually let you know where you could make an emergency call. Why this is different than your cell phone signal is because your phone can communicate with any cell phone provider's antenna. It doesn't have to be your provider like Verizon or AT&T. It could be any antenna. Part of the cell phone alliance is that for emergency purposes, your phone can communicate with anything out there that can broadcast that you're in trouble. So this new icon in the Apple Watch Compass app will let you know exactly where you can call for help if you need it. Again, thoughtful feature. And I like the way they're thinking there. Within the Compass app, there's also a new 3D view that gives you like an elevation of all of your different waypoints. I don't actually know what this is for, why I would need it, because it's not really an elevation profile. It doesn't really show your route in the hills and stuff along it. It just shows any waypoints that you've manually added in the Compass app and what elevation they're at. So if you have your campsite at the summit of a mountain and you went down to get some water from a stream or something, you'll see how far away in terms of elevation you are from that point. Interesting, but I don't know the practical use behind that. And then finally, the absolute biggest thing they announced at WWDC for watchOS 10 is the inclusion of maps, like real topographic maps with contour lines and labels and trail markers and summit point markers and points of interest, the whole thing. And it looks super cool. So they showed this off in a demo where, they really only showed one view of it, which I was kind of like frustrated by. I wanted to see more practical uses, like a hiker out in the wild using it. And I have lots of questions about it. Like I said, I've installed the developer version on my Apple Watch so far, and I've been playing with it a little bit. And it seems like it's not fully baked yet, and we're going to have to wait and see what they do with this. But for now, it seems like so here's my big question about the maps. A, will you be able to access them easily from within an activity? Like on a Garmin watch, you can scroll through all your data pages and eventually get to a map. It's very convenient. You can get there very quickly. You don't have to leave your activity to go to the other app. It's very seamless. So that's my big question for Apple. Will they include this as sort of a data page within your trail running or hiking or mountain biking activity? That's to be determined. Another big question is, will they be routable? So from my initial impression, these maps are going to rely on Apple Maps. That's the app that you'll have to launch in order to see the map. So by that logic, Apple Maps is routable. You can get in your car and navigate from your house to work and use Apple Maps on your phone to get there. However, it's not the backcountry. It's not trails. I'm wondering how they're going to handle this with trails and being in the woods and on mountains and things like that. Will you be able to put in a destination like the top of Mount Washington and have your watch navigate you turn by turn, telling you what trails to use to get there? If they can do that, this is going to be big. And then my final and arguably most important question is, will the maps be offline? Will I need a cell phone signal to generate a route? Will I need a cell phone signal or Wi-Fi to actually see the map? Or will I be able to store them in the watch? And again, my initial impression here is that you're going to need your phone with you in order to see the map at all, which I guess is okay. But for some users out there who want to go on a trail run and just take your Apple Watch because it has a cell phone built into it, you can send messages and it's basically a phone on your wrist and you don't want to have to carry two things. It's not a great solution. I hope that they will allow you to install the maps to the internal storage of the watch. Again, to be determined. We don't know the answer to that yet. Time will tell. And then another new feature, this is kind of minor, is that not minor, it's kind of a big deal, is that they've introduced a new API for the workout app that will allow third-party developers to integrate their features into the workout app. This is important from the perspective of, from the demo they used was Training Peaks. Training Peaks is a training platform where you can invite your coach to help you with your training. They can see all of your information. There's functional threshold graphs and all kinds of information on Training Peaks, and you can build workouts within that platform. And the demo they showed was using Training Peaks to create a workout and then, importing that into your Apple Workouts app, which is really cool. And I could see this being useful for things like Strava. Maybe you can import, a workout or a segment or something from Strava, or, even if they wanted to, now that it's available, Garmin Connect could allow you to pull your workouts in from Garmin Connect and execute them within the workout app on your Apple Watch. I don't think that'll happen because of the competition there, but you see what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that could happen potentially with the inclusion of this new API. So it is a big deal, even though it's kind of geeky and you probably don't care about it, but you will care about it when your favorite app can talk to your Apple Watch. So those are all the new things. And like I said, it's currently in developer build only. So the mass majority of people watching this or listening cannot download this and just, start using it. You need to be a developer enrolled in the Apple developer program. It costs money to do that. And on top of that, you do sign, an agreement saying you're not going to use it for any purposes other than developing. There's a lot that goes into it, which is why I can't share a lot of details about it, but it does look really interesting. I'm excited to test this, put it through its paces, try external sensors, try all the new modes and especially the mapping and see how it all plays out. And stay tuned for that on the main channel. I'll have a ton of follow-up content. Okay, that's Apple in a nutshell. Did I waste this whole episode talking about Apple? Probably. We've been going for like 40 minutes now, and I haven't even got to the Q&A. Okay, I do want to briefly talk about the new releases from Garmin. So 2 new devices, actually more than 2, but 2 main devices. We've got the Garmin Epix Pro and the Fenix 7 Pro. And right now I'm actually wearing the Epix Pro on my wrist. So what's the big deal about these new products? Well, if you saw my YouTube video, you know all about them as of now, but these are pretty different. Like from a high level, they seem so similar to the older models like the Epix Gen 2 and the Fenix 7. They almost have all of the same features. At a actual physical hardware level, there's a couple of new things. So now the Garmin Epix, which previously only came in one size, is now available in 3 sizes. There's a 42 millimeter, a 47 millimeter, and a 51 millimeter. So those are the same case sizes that you would find on the Garmin Fenix 7. Now you can get 3 different sizes on the Epix, which is super cool. And right now I've got the big one on. This is the 51 millimeter form factor. And the interesting thing they did here with the Epix is that they lost, like on the Garmin Fenix 7, if you got the big one, it was the 7X. That would mean the big one. And if you got the small one, it was the 7S for small or slim. And then the middle of the road 47 millimeter was just the Fenix 7. Now in the Epix, they didn't do that. There's no Epix S or Epix X. It's just 42, 47, or 51. I prefer that. It's very straightforward. And the S and X monikers were a little bit confusing on the Fenix 7, but now it's still confusing because the Fenix 7 Pro, the new one, still uses S Pro and X Pro, but on the Epix, they don't. I don't know. Standardize it, Garmin. What else is new? Well, now all of the models have a flashlight built in. And on the old one, on the original Garmin Fenix 7 and Epix, only the big one, the big 51 millimeter form factor, got a flashlight. Now all the models have the flashlight. I'm a huge fan of this flashlight. For those of you listening to audio only, I'm showing it off in the video right now. Head over to YouTube if you want to see it. But the flashlight on these watches is incredibly useful. I use it every day, like in the middle of the night to get up to get some water or something. I will use this to walk down the hallway so I don't wake anybody up. If I drop my keys under my car or my kid drops a toy, you've got a flashlight on your wrist at all times. And sure, most people have it on their phones, but I do find it very useful. I use it all the time. However, Garmin advertises the flashlight as something you'd use out in the wild, like hiking or running or something like that. I've never used it for that capacity, but I do find it very useful for like everyday boring tasks that you'd want to use your phone light for. Now you have it on your wrist and you can access it just by tapping a button twice and you've got a flashlight. Really useful. So I'm glad they included that on all of the sizes now. And then another big feature in terms of hardware differences is that the new Pro models got a new heart rate sensor. The heart rate sensor on the Epix Pro and Fenix 7 Pro is a little bit bigger and it has more LEDs. There's now 6 LEDs on there. And what's interesting, I was tipped off by this by some of the comments on the video, is that in normal everyday life, only 2 of these LEDs actually illuminate. And then when you start an activity like a run or a ride, all 6 of them illuminate. So it seems like Garmin's like kind of balancing out battery life for, daily life, because maybe you don't need absolutely perfect heart rate information for 24-hour use. But when you want to go on your run, you can kick it into high gear and get increased accuracy. And in my testing so far, the heart rate sensor on these new Garmin Pro models is really good. I've gotten really good results from it on every run. And something like on the original Fenix 7 and Epix Gen 2, those treated me pretty well too. I got pretty good accuracy from those too. But the larger versions, the Fenix 7X, the bigger models like the Tactic 7, those I would get questionable results because I've got little child wrists. They're like 16.5 centimeters. And the big watches tend to move around a little bit when I'm running. And I've noticed even with the big version of the Epix Pro on my wrist, I'm getting really good results. So there's that. Other than those new hardware physical changes, there's a couple of things under the hood when it comes to software. That is a new hill score and endurance score. Those are new metrics to let you know how good you are at climbing hills and how your endurance is. And these are different. The endurance score is different than VO2 max, but it does kind of tie into that. Pretty interesting. And on top of that, there's a couple of other new things like a new weather map overlay that'll show you wind speed and precipitation and cloud cover and things like that, all on a map view on the watch. However, it's quirky. I've got some issues with this. First of all, the map view with the weather is only available in the Weather Widget. So you have to actually go in to the weather, see your forecast, scroll down, and then you'll see the map. You can't actually view this when you're in an activity. So if you're out on a run or a hike and you scroll to the map page on your watch, you will not see the weather. In order to see the weather, you have to leave your activity, go back to the weather widget, and then view it there. Kind of weird. I don't know why they decided to do that. And overall, the usability of it is kind of glitchy right now. Like if you zoom in or zoom out or pan, it needs to regenerate everything. It takes a second. It's not super smooth, but I'm hopeful they can improve that over time. It's a very new thing, so hopefully it gets a little bit better. Another thing I would like to see here is that they could store some of this information to the watch, because right now you need a cellular or Wi-Fi connection in order to get the weather map. So if you're hiking and you've got no cell phone signal, you won't be able to access the map. And I feel like these maps would be more useful in that capacity. It'd be cool if they could store maybe like a 12-hour forecast of mapping to the watch, but we're not there yet. And that is the Epix and Fenix 7 Pro. Like I said, I've got a full in-depth video over on YouTube. If you want to learn more about this, head over there, watch the full video. There's a lot more information and actual hands-on use there. Here, I just want to give you the news and what's going on. And with that, we have got to the point where I want to dive into listener Q&A. If you don't know what this is, listener Q&A is a section where I answer your questions, just like the name implies. However, these questions actually come from Instagram. So if you want to take part in this in the next episode, for example, head over to my Instagram, which is linked down below at Chase the Summit, and follow me because I post a story right before every episode where I ask for your questions, and you can actually send a question to me and I will respond to it on the air in real time. I don't prep for this. I just kind of write them out and then I read them and respond in real time. So hopefully I've got answers to them. So make sure to follow me on Instagram if you want to take part. Okay, first question is from Doug Moore. He asks, heat training is always a hot topic. Do any watches check your body temperature? Good question. And funny enough, we've had some nasty heat. Like a week ago, we had couple of 90 plus degree Fahrenheit days. They felt very warm, except 2 days later, we're back into the 40s and 50s here because this is New England and we have weird weather. So to answer your question, a few watches do measure body temperature. The Apple Watch Ultra Series 8, both do. The TicWatch Pro 5, and then there's even a couple of Fitbits I think do. Now, unfortunately, none of them measured body temperature in the way that you want it to. So you want an active measurement when you're out running, you're in the heat, riding a bike, you're doing something physical outdoors in extreme heat. These don't do that. So the way these work is they pick up your temperature while you sleep, and that's supposed to give you an idea of, I think in Apple's world, it's mainly for menstrual cycle tracking for women, and that's how they use it. Now, I was really hoping that some brand out there would do exactly what you're asking, or even like an on-demand measurement where you could trigger a skin temperature measurement or core body temperature measurement. And from what I understand, none of them are doing that. However, there is a product on the market that I have in my pile of sensors over here that is an external sensor called the Core Body Temperature, CORE. That's the brand name. And Core is compatible with Garmin. It's compatible with Coros, and a couple of other, I think Suunto and Polar might be compatible, but essentially it does what you want. It's designed to hook up to a heart rate strap, like an ECG strap that you can wear on your chest. And this sensor can actually read your core body temperature from the surface of your skin. And I've tried it a few times. It does work. It seems pretty reliable. And they've even got like a sticky pack for it. So you don't need a heart rate sensor. You can actually stick it to your skin for an activity. And this will do what you want. So if you're really interested in heat training and learning more about that, I would suggest checking out the Core Body Temperature. It is kind of expensive. It's a couple $100, but pretty cool tech. Next up, we got Finding Philip. Where do you see your running journey taking you in the next 5 to 10 years? Holy smokes, dude. 10 years. I don't even know how to answer that. I take it year by year right now. I'm hopeful that I continue to get better and maybe learn more over time. I'd also like to connect more with the community, the running community, over the next 5 to 10 years, and learn more about what's going on out there. But yeah, I don't know if I can answer that. I'd love to take on some more mountain related projects. And I know this is Finding Philip. He's Philip Karsha. I think I'm pronouncing his name right, based out of New Hampshire. And he does some crazy hiking up there. Like he's completed the grid, I believe, which is like hiking all the mountains up there in every month of the year. He's hiked across the Kingamingas Highway and done all kinds of things. So props to you, Philip. Personally, for me, I play it day by day, year by year. So I don't have a really good answer for that, but thanks for the question. Stu from 82 says, how do you cope with the feeling of getting less fit after an event? I feel like a lot of us face this. I like to call it post-race blues, where there's all this hype and excitement over a race, and particularly an ultramarathon, like a 100-miler, because you're so fit and excited leading into the race. Then the race happens, and then you get your ass kicked and you're ruined for a month sometimes afterwards, and you feel less fit. I think, it goes back to what Apple's trying to get us to do and appreciate gratitude a little bit more, or show gratitude to the things you have, and maybe for me, I try to think more about the positive experience I had at the race, and it was all worth it for that one event to put all my, everything in one bucket and go for it. But I don't have a great answer here either. I hate the feeling of getting less fit. I'm not going to pretend I don't. And right now I feel like I'm not as in shape as I have been in past years, and it's driving me bananas. So I'm probably not a great one to ask for this. I would just try to look at the bright side, and maybe if you're ruined from a race or you're injured, try to find other things to be appreciative of or other activities to take part in. It's the best way I can answer that. Torbjorn HB. Fun fact, he used to like small watches and now you have the Hulk 51 millimeter on your wrist. Indeed I do. It's a big watch, and it's funny you say that. I have a video from like a year ago where I talk about the Garmin Fenix 6S, the small one, being my all-time favorite watch. And here I am with a giant watch on my wrist. I think it comes with the territory of what I've been doing lately. The YouTube channel, I end up experiencing a lot of different watches, and over time, I've gotten more and more okay with the size of these big ones. I will say I still like the small ones, but I really appreciate the bigger screen and battery life you get on the big ones. So that's why I'm wearing the big one. If I could shrink this and keep the same specs, I would, but I can't. So I'm wearing the big one. And he's got another question here. How's your fitness level compared to before your toe injury? For those of you unaware, I broke my toe back in, what was it? January, I think. I broke it actually up in this very attic when I was working in the attic trying to finish this room. And I would say my fitness level has increased substantially since the injury, but I'm still not back to 100%. The good news is my toe is holding up really well. So even at that 50 mile or the 21 and a half, as it were, that ultra, really hard terrain, stubbed my toe plenty of times. My kids have stomped on it, all the things, still in one piece and doesn't hurt at all. So I think I'm in the clear with the toe. I hope. Next question, Noah B85. What are your current top 3 watches that we'd find on your wrist? Good question. Top 3 watches that you'll find on my wrist would be A, Garmin Epix Pro 51 millimeter, wearing it every day. B would be the Apple Watch Ultra. Love it. It's a lot of fun to wear for daily use. Even for running, it's really nice. Cell phone built into it. Love that. It's a great watch. It's not perfect for sports and fitness, but in terms of like an everyday carry, fun thing to have, the Apple Watch Ultra is amazing. And I would say number 3 would be the Garmin Forerunner 965. Big fan of that watch. Nice and lightweight, big screen, AMOLED, great battery life. All 3 of those watches are top notch in my opinion. Now, I don't want to leave out the competition. I do really like the new Suunto Vertical. I had a lot of fun with that, testing it, wearing it, still got it. It's a great watch. Coros, the Apex Pro, the Apex 2 Pro, big fan of that. And yeah, that's probably it. Polar hasn't done anything in a while, and I'm a little concerned for them. I'm hoping we see something new or even a firmware update. It's been quiet over at the Polar camp, but top 3 would be Epix 51 millimeter Pro, Apple Watch Ultra, Garmin 965. Thanks for your question. Martin Barrett PT, not a question, but Garmin should create a band that can track sleep and other metrics instead of wearing a bulky watch. I completely agree, and I've talked about this before. They are in a great position to put out a Garmin band, something that does body battery, sleep tracking, all the daily metrics like step counting, calories burned, all that stuff that syncs over to Garmin Connect, but even without a GPS chip, just for wellness metrics. Heart rate sensor, thin, light band, and I think a lot of people would adopt this, and I hope they're working on it because it's a huge opportunity for them. They could definitely put this out, make it cheap, $100. And then I think a lot of people, even owners of a big watch like the Epix Pro or Fenix 7 Pro, a lot of those people would buy it too, just to have a lightweight option that they could wear instead of the bulky watch. You might like wearing the 51 millimeter version out on your ultra marathon, but do you want to sleep with it every night? Probably not. And that's where a band would be huge. Or even, wearing to work. If you want to go to work, or if you've got a physical job, you're a firefighter or a law enforcement person and you can't wear a big watch, then having a nice lightweight band would be huge. And again, for sleeping and for all other purposes, it makes a lot of sense. So hopefully they listen to this podcast and they do it. Next up, we've got James Fenix. Do optical heart rate sensors work better on the inside of your wrist or outside of your wrist? And I get this question a lot. I think it's an old wives' tale, or that's not politically correct anymore, right? I think it's a myth that you should wear your watch backwards on the inside of your wrist. And maybe you watching this get better results that way. But the way these things work, it's an optical sensor. So it's shining light through your skin, and the light receiver is trying to pick up the differences in light to see your pulse. So I don't think the location on the outside or inside really matters all that much. What I think is more important is the distance from your wrist bone to the actual watch. A lot of people wear their watch too close to their wrist, like right on top of it. And your wrist is very bony. And because of that, you get bad results. So if you move your watch back, and actually in Garmin's documentation, even in Coros's documentation, they say to wear your watch 2 inches back on your wrist. And that's like, a couple of fingers length or width back from your wrist. That'll yield the best results. Now, there are some caveats there. I will say if you have tattoos on the top of your wrist, yeah, you'll probably get better results if you flip the watch over. I actually have tattoos on the inside of my wrist, so I would probably get worse results, but I don't think it really matters. Generally, optical sensors are going to work similarly depending on, your body fat percentage, the hair color of your arm hair, the color of your skin. Those things play more of a role into accuracy rather than on the outside or inside, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Next question. Eduardo 1977. How much gym workouts are good for trail running, or should you lift heavy? I'm the wrong guy to ask. I'm not a trainer or a coach, so take this with a grain of salt. But for me, I will say I think lifting, doing squats, doing lunges, doing calf raises and leg pushes, things like that are very valuable for trail running. It's also good for all of your supporting muscles that keep you stable, stability muscles, your hip flexors, all of that benefit hugely from lifting weights. Lifting, not listing. Now, the other half of that is I barely lift weights. I need to do more. But I do think there's a huge payoff if you can focus on that. I wouldn't say, lifting is more important than running a lot. I'd say the most important thing is to trail run on the kind of terrain that you plan on racing or running the most on. Try to do that more, but complementary workouts to your running are hugely beneficial. And I think any coach would agree with me on that. But again, I'm not a coach. Feel the Need says, what's your go-to trail running shoe? Should I go with the Speed Goat 5 from Hoka? Yeah, so the Speed Goat 5 is a great shoe. Personally, for me, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. A little bit narrow in the forefoot for me. I've got weird feet where, most people have that hourglass shape for their feet where the middle is narrow. I've got like a meatloaf foot where the whole foot is the same width. I don't know why. So when I get a shoe that has that hourglass shape, I immediately know it's not going to work for me. So what shoes have been working for me? The Ultra Mont Blanc Boa and Mont Blanc are some of my all-time favorite trail shoes. They're very expensive, but the ride and the durability and the quality I've come to appreciate from them has been worth the money. The Mont Blanc Boa in particular has become one of my favorites because of the Boa lacing system. You don't have to mess with shoelaces. They don't become untied, and you can adjust them on the fly, which is critical if you're in a race. If you've got tied shoes, you're hesitant to stop and spend the time to adjust your laces, where these Boas are so quick, you can just pop them, spin them, and adjust how tight the shoe is. I really like that. However, I've also been wearing the Hoka Mafate Speed 5 quite a bit. And what's interesting about those is they fit my foot better than the Speed Goat. And it's strange because they're all very similar, like the Tecton X, the Mafate Speed 4, and the Speedgoat 5 are all very similar in terms of the last and how they fit, but I find the Mafate to be a little bit more roomy for my foot. Again, very subjective, and for me, that's what works, but your mileage may vary. Shoes are very personal, and that's why I have a hard time making videos about shoes. There's Ryan Clayton, Kafuzi, all those guys, Seth, James Demore, they're all making great videos about shoes, but I'm always like, how do you review a shoe? Because all of our feet are so different. What works for me may not work for you. I might like running in Crocs, but I wouldn't suggest you do that. I don't, by the way. Okay, next up is Shoal 29012. Great name. What's your training volume? How do you balance work, family, and training? My training volume right now, like I said earlier in this episode, is not great. I've been 20 to 30 miles a week for the past 3 or 4 weeks, unfortunately, because life is so crazy around here. Ideally, I would like to be 40 to 50 miles a week, mainly on trails. That's my sweet spot. I find if I go above that, if I go 60 plus miles a week, I'm prone to be injured. Even if I gradually work up to it slowly, I'm probably doing something wrong. But I know if I was running 60 to 70 miles a week, I would probably hurt myself eventually. Maybe it's my age, maybe it's my physiological issues. I don't really know, but I find that for training for a 100-mile ultramarathon, if I can get in 50 miles a week on trails, I'm golden and I'm going to be in really good shape for the race. I also think time on feet is more important than mileage. A lot of people focus on mileage when it comes to volume, but time on feet is equally as important. Like if you're a construction worker and you're outside on your feet 8 hours a day for your job, and then you come home and you run 10 miles, I would say that person is going to be in better shape than just a sedentary job worker going home and running 10 miles. Where, you see what I'm saying here? Training is training. Your body knows no difference from mileage to time on feet. And I think time on feet is way more valuable. So hopefully that's helpful. For me, I would say 40 to 50 miles a week or about 8 hours of training a week is great. It's a good foundation for me to go into a race. Now, when you ask about balancing life with training, you say work, family, training. So my job now is this, okay? So I've got it a lot easier than a lot of you out there when it comes to training. Ideally, training for me should be a lot easier. But like I said, life has been crazy and my days are so short now because I pick up my kids from school at 2:00 and the day is like over after that. So I basically have from like 10 a.m. to like 2:00 to work, which is making videos and testing and reviewing and making podcasts and all that. And then I've got to squeeze in my run during that time before, everyone's home from school. So it is challenging for me as well. When it comes to balancing that, I don't do a great job. I find really inopportune times to go for my runs. Like right before we have to like start prepping for dinner or something, I'll be like, is it cool if I go for my run? And I could tell my wife's a little annoyed by that, but she'll let me go. I just try to squeeze it in where I can and make it work. I think, in our situation, my family situation, I've got 4 kids. They're getting older. There's a lot of after school activities and friends and stuff going on. It's crazy right now. This age is nuts. And I feel like this is going to be the busiest time of my life. So it's really challenging, but I know I hate to complain because I know other people out there are in a way more stressful, higher demand situation. But when it comes to balance, I just try to do what I can and be grateful that I was able to do it. Even if it's a 2-mile run, that was a shift I've done a couple of years ago. Was I had a big issue with just going on like a 2 or 3 mile run. I felt like it was never worth it. If you change your mindset a little bit to just go and do a 20 or 30 minute run, it's always worth it. So just go, right? Don't like make excuses and say, well, I don't have enough time. I'm not going to bother. You got to at least give it a shot. And it's worth it. Like, what do you have to lose? So I don't know if that answers your question. That was kind of a rant. Hope it was helpful. Next question is from Torbjorn HB. How's the new job with YouTube and podcasting? Great. I mean, it's a lot of work. From the outside, you may not see what goes into all of it, but there's way more than just hitting record. It's easily, I'm easily working like 40, 50 hours a week. I am on 100% of the time. I love it though. So, it's a great thing. It's amazing to be my own boss and work for myself and be able to live this life. And I'm very grateful, but it is stressful and a lot of work. Dealing with, the brands I deal with and things like that and the emails and staying on top of things. It's a lot. And I feel like I could definitely fill the time of two people. Like if I had an assistant or an employee of some kind, that would be amazing. Don't think I can afford that, but it would be awesome to have. But so far it's been great. It's been fun. I'm really enjoying it and I'm hoping I can keep it going. The next question is the Wandering Social Worker. I have a 35K trail race coming soon with 5,000 feet of elevation gain. Tips not to die, LOL. Take it easy. If you're trained for it, just have fun, man. Like if you feel like you're ready and prepared for what's about to happen, have fun, buckle up and go for it. If you're worried that you're not trained enough, dial back your pace. Try not to gas yourself too hard too early. Walk all the hills. That's a big one. Walk all the hills. And my rule of thumb is if a golf ball would roll down it, walk up it. Don't run up it because that'll kick you later in the race. Stay hydrated, eat a lot, force a smile. That's a big thing I do is when I'm in a bonk, I'm feeling like crap. I want to go home. I smile and I feel it's weird, but your body responds to that. If you smile and force it, your endorphins still flow. Like something happens physiologically that makes you a little less stressed out. So try that. And good luck. I hope it works for you. And that's it for all of the questions from Instagram. We've been on the air for an hour now, so I'm probably going to wrap it up here. I really appreciate all the questions. Like I said, if you want to be part of the show and have your question featured, watch out for the Q&A on Instagram and send me a question. If you don't have Instagram, use the contact form on my website over at chasetosummit.com. Shoot me a message through there. Shoot me a DM on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, or just leave me a comment on this YouTube channel and I'll try to include it in the next episode. One more shout out. Thank you to all the Patreon members and listeners. I really appreciate everything, all the support of this podcast. It's been a lot of fun to meet people in the wild who listen to the show. It really means a lot to me. Once again, there's a YouTube channel now for this podcast. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, go there now and subscribe so we can get those numbers up. It would be great to get that channel over 1,000 subscribers and, make these videos worthwhile because editing the videos and putting them up there does take more work than just posting an audio version. I do enjoy doing it, but it would be great if you could hit that subscribe button and leave a comment over there. That's another nice benefit of the YouTube podcast channel is that you can actually comment where on a podcast you can't. Once again, thanks everybody. Check out the merch store, 20% off, listen20 discount code. What other plugs do I have? That's it. All right. I think that's the end of this episode. Thanks for tuning in and I will see you or you'll hear me next week. Goodbye.